Hello and welcome to Almost 30.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Lindsay Simsick and Crystal Williams, best friends in real life.
Mm-hmm. And you don't need to be 30 to listen.
That's true.
You can be who you are.
That is true.
That's the combo starter of Almost 30. You can be whatever age you want to be.
Are you sweating? I'm sweating.
I am steamy. And this, I was like, I need to wear my warmest. Also, turtlenecks give me anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like
feels
I'm
a little...
Yeah.
Looks great, but yeah, I'm melting.
Like when I think too
lights.
hard about a turtleneck, I'm stressed out right now. Like I kind of want to cry because it's like someone's like holding me back.
Oh, didn't you have like in a past life something around your neck?
Dude, I swear, I'm not getting choked. That's one thing. So I don't like when people, like my ex used to like fake like laugh, choke, and it was pretty dark now that I think about it. But like I would like be like crying.
Yeah.
Because it scares me so much.
Yeah, that is scary.
I don't like that. So many people like that.
Like as a kink?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I'm good on that.
I'm good on that.
Unless I'm in control.
I don't even want to choke anybody. Like I'm like, what's that too?
No, yeah, I don't get off by choking someone. That doesn't make sense.
I don't know what that is. I need to look that up. Like I need to Google what that is from a mind perspective. Why do people like that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like,
Gives them more sensation?
Yeah, I think there is something to like lack of oxygen, like increasing the intensity of an orgasm.
Oh, interesting.
So there's that. But then I also think it's more than that for people who like to.
Yeah, I hear you.
Chokety choke.
I hear you.
Anywho.
I hear you. That's not a journey I want to go on. I'm like, oh my God. We're going to be talking about attachment theory. We're going to be talking about personal development and relationships. And I had so much fun with Ty Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
It was so funny because we met and she sat down and she's like, this whole time you're talking, I'm thinking about that this is how people feel when they meet me. She's like, I feel like we're like the same person. She's like, because I was talking about her dog had passed away and it was very present in the room. Like I could feel the dog. And so I kept asking about it. And she's like, but it was funny because it was almost like, I felt like it was almost like, I don't realize how deep I go. Like I don't know how to gauge depth. So for some people, I could imagine at times they're like, "Hey, I don't want to talk about my dead dog before I do a podcast."
You're not priming me the right way.
No, honestly, they're like, "Hey, this is kind of."
It's like not wanting to have like a terrible business conversation before you like step on stage.
Yeah, like don't fire someone before you go on stage or like get bad news or something. But I'm kind of like I've got a chip missing a little bit. And so it's not like I kept being like, what about that dog? But I just we just kind of kept talking about it. And so in this conversation, we're like laughing. Like, I don't know what it was about her, but we were just like, couldn't take it seriously. Also, I learned when we were talking about attachment styles. Yeah. So I actually was realizing someone that I had dated wasn't a narcissist. They were a dismissive avoidant, and those can be confused. And I also realized that dismissive avoidant is disorganized. Disorganized attachment style is also called dismissive, or is also called some chaos avoidant, or disorganized is also called something. Disorganized attachment is also called, I need to look it up because I was like, I have a different attachment style than I thought. I'm mostly secure, but.
What does disorganized mean?
Disorganized means like you're both anxious and avoidant. It's really dependent on the relationship.
Okay, got it.
So,
got it.
You know, I've secure now, but I've been at times anxious in relationships and like,
yeah.
And then at times I've been like completely avoidant.
Totally. It totally depends on the other.
I think most people are like that.
Yeah, I would think so too.
I bet most people in the truth are like that.
It's like the dynamic kind of activates one or the other.
Yes.
Because it's even, I've experienced that in friendship, and we've experienced that where it's like if one person's a little anxious, then you're like stiff arming them, and then yeah. But I guess you could have anxious and anxious. I know couples that are anxious and anxious.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
How did they do that? Do they like that?
I don't think it's always enjoyable. But like, I also think it's a codependent comfort to both be kind of anxious. Yeah.
I dated someone once and he was like, I'm anxious, so like I'm always going to be available and replying. I was like, it's like, ugh. Ew.
Play the game, man.
Yeah, I know. I was like,
that's an interesting thing to say before you say I will like always reply, because you could be secure
totally,
and always reply.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
He was one of those guys that I don't. No one does ever know this one. That had done a lot of work, was in men's groups, like very emotionally attuned and available, but it almost like kept him stuck a little bit. He was an actor. Not for me.
That's a whole flavor.
Not for me. Unless you're like Brad Pitt.
I don't think I've ever dated an actor. I've hooked up with actors, but I've never dated an actor. I've really been in that vortex.
I know.
It's a vortex.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just a lot of stuff that goes along with that. That I think it'd be hard to date a woman actor.
I agree. Yeah. You know? I totally agree.
But I think people would think it'd be hard to date an influencer.
Yeah.
So there's a spectrum, you know. What can you do? We wanted to, I don't think we've talked about on the podcast yet, attachment styles. Maybe potentially.
We've danced
around it. And I know it's such a popular topic, and it's interesting because when you go to school, it's only like a part of it, attachment styles is. So it's just a theory that you talk about in school, and it's kind of really gained a lot of traction and popularity. The book Attached is really good.
Yeah, I'm interviewing him soon.
Cool.
He has a new one out.
Oh, great.
So I'm glad she's going first.
Yeah, she went first. And what I really liked about her too is like she does personal development school, and she was an addict for a while. She had a really chaotic, crazy household. And then she had a surgery, and then she became an addict for a while. So she had to get herself out of her addiction. And then when she discovered like psychology and the subconscious, she just really became obsessed with it and healed herself, healed her life. I love people with a little texture. I love a little bit of, I love some story. I love some grit. I love some color. I love a little bit of like decoration on the tapestry of life with people. And I just really appreciate that in her. And something she said that actually is super helpful as a practice that I think about quite a bit. She talked about the subconscious, and we'll explore it more in this episode, but in it, she described that affirmations won't work for the subconscious. So she's a believer that affirmations don't work. And she said that your subconscious needs to see actual results in your reality that go against the belief. So if the belief is, I am not loved, then you couldn't just say, I am loved, I am loved, I am loved. What you need to do is find actual proof that you are loved. So maybe your dog loves you. Maybe your cat loves you. Maybe someone smiles at you and like does something nice for you. I pray that at some point in your life you've experienced some of that. But you just continue to collect data that's provable in reality. And then she said you can record it on like a voice notes app on your phone, or record it and just play it to your subconscious for like 3 minutes a day.
Love that.
And just having the actual reality will then sort of meet, or your beliefs will then meet the reality that you're speaking to in it. Haven't done it yet, but you know, I think I actually should probably do it. And I think it'd be interesting to look at like, what are the source fracture wounds that I'm still working with, and how can I have like different experiences in my reality. I do that anyways in reality, where I'm having an experience that goes against a belief that I have, like there's no good men out there. If someone has that, and then you meet a really good man. Right. It's like there are really good men. There's quality men, you know, good men. And so whenever you're in an experience in your reality that's affirming a different and goes against your belief, you can kind of double click on it, but having the recording helps even more. Yeah.
And I think in this sense, you can look around you and look back and say, oh, I've experienced someone loving me. I am lovable. But would it be good to like seek out like nurturing and cultivating a loving relationship with like a friend, and kind of having that reflected back to you? Like, could you kind of like pursue it?
Oh, that's a good one.
And create proof?
That's a good one. Probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a really good one. Pursue it to create truth.
I know my brain, and my brain is definitely like that. Like I need to see the proof and kind of have that like looped and cemented.
Oftentimes I'll listen to affirmations, and it's interesting because my conscious mind will be clocking if this feels true or not. You know, I think you'll do that of like, I have abundance beyond my wildest dreams. I'm like, no, I am whatever. I'm like, yeah, you'll kind of know what feels true or not. And so that can kind of be helpful to kind of think through things. But in Catherine Woodward Thomas's book, she wrote Calling in the One and then Conscious Uncoupling. It's her new book. And it's interesting because it breaks down like source fracture wounds of like, I'm unlovable, I'm worthy, unworthy, like, like the core of it. And I've actually found that helpful to apply to this theory, because then it's like I can understand what are my core source fracture wounds, and then you can kind of work on those rather than being like kind of guessing.
Right. Or kind of having like the second or third string wound kind of be distracting. And it's like, no, what's really underneath that?
Like I have millions of dollars behind my wildest dreams. Like, okay. But there's things that go below that. Like I'm unworthy of love.
Yeah.
Would probably be below that type of experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, this was an amazing episode. I'm so excited for you guys to meet her and listen to her. We had so much fun. So Ty Gibson, she's a best-selling author, speaker, and she's the co-founder of the Personal Development School. She's certified in 13 different modalities, and she's really dedicated her life to supporting people and having deeper, more meaningful relationships. She has a book out called The New Attachment Theory. It's the relationship by rewiring your brain and your nervous system, which is going to be out May 6th. So I'm really excited for you guys to meet her. She has the Personal Development School. You can find her on Instagram at the Personal Development School if you want more.
Thank you so much, Thais. And thank you all for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to the show so you get new episodes every single week. And we're on YouTube, so you can see us in the flesh. We'd love for you to subscribe on YouTube. We have all of our episodes up there. I think it's like kind of the way I'm consuming podcasts as of late is video. It just kind of creates a whole experience. So we'd love to have you there. And we're on Instagram at Almost 30 Podcast, on TikTok at Almost 30 Podcast. I'm on Instagram at Lindsay Simsick.
And I'm at It's Krista with a K.
Not
okay,
a
guys.
QU.
Not a QU, not a Quista. Quista. I used to be, I think my Instagram at one time was like, It's Quista Lynn.
Oh, really?
People call me Quista.
I like that.
I know. Okay, guys, enjoy this one. Thank you, Thais.
Bye. We talk a lot on this show about wellness, but one thing people don't always think about is the cookware we use every day and how that's connected to your wellness. A lot of traditional nonstick cookware still contains forever chemicals like PFAS, which can actually leach into food and the environment. Our place is changing that with non-toxic, high-performance kitchenware that's designed to make cooking easier and safer. Their 4-piece cookware set is amazing because it replaces a whole cabinet full of pots and pans with just 4 pieces. You are going to be obsessed. It has 2 always pans and 2 perfect pots in mini and full sizes. You could sear, saute, fry, steam, boil, bake with them. It is phenomenal. I use them every single day, and the nonstick performance is incredible. Everything just slides right out, and cleanup is just amazing. I'm about easy cleanup. They also make the Wonder Oven, which I have been talking about on Instagram. It's a non-toxic air fryer and oven in one that makes quick meals at home so much simpler. I'm obsessed. I air fry, I bake, I reheat, I defrost. Like, it is phenomenal and looks so cute in our kitchen. Our place is having their biggest sale of the season right now. Save up to 40% site-wide. 40%. Did you hear that? Site-wide. Now through April 12th. Head to FromOurPlace.com/almost30 to see why more than 1 million people have made the switch to Our Place kitchenware. And with their 100-day risk-free trial and free returns, you can shop with total confidence. Shop Our Place's best sale of the season. Go to FromOurPlace.com/almost30. Okay, if I know there are going to be photos or it's a big night, I'm going straight to Revolve. Your girl doesn't go out that much anymore, so when I do, I want to look good. It's where I go when I don't want to overthink my outfit. Everything feels curated, not chaotic. It's so easy. So I'll find one piece, and then Revolve shows me similar styles, different cuts, different colors, different outfits, and they just always fit the vibe. I love going to their curated edits because I can just get served what I'm needing, like date night or fall vibes or spring vibes. It's great. I actually wore this really chic dress from their new Revolve LA label to dinner recently. I loved it. My husband loved it. The silhouettes are strong and modern. They're very polished, very confident. It's the kind of thing you wear when you want to look expensive without trying too hard. You know what I mean? Plus, they carry all the brands I already love, new arrivals, drops daily, and if I order a few options, the shipping is so fast. This is one of the best things about Revolve. It's like 2 days. It's crazy. And returns are also incredibly easy. Their customer service is phenomenal. And whether it's a big night out, a wedding, a trip, or you just need something last minute that actually works, Revolve always has it. I'm actually wearing a blazer from Anina Bing that I got in Revolve. I love it. It's classic. It's timeless. It's the best. But you can go to revolve.com/almost30 to shop our favorites and use code A30pod for 15% off your first order. And definitely check out the new Revolve LA label while you're there. Fast shipping, easy returns. It just makes everything easier. That's revolve.com/almost30. You can shop our favorites and get 15% off your first order with code A30pod. Offer available for a limited time, so don't miss out.
I'm so glad you're here. We've been in deep on some other stuff, and we're going to like transition to more of our things, but it is like such a pleasure and such a delight. I've like loved your content for so long, and I think you're just such an amazing teacher, and just even spending like 15 minutes together, we're just already in deep. And I think I'm so excited to have you because I think the conversation around attachment styles has gotten so popular and so mainstream. I talk about it all the time in my work and even in my life. And I just think too, there's so much going on with this generation and how anxious they are. And it feels like more anxious. I feel like more of the women I work with are anxious. What was like your first learning about attachment theory? Like when did you first learn about it and how did it like impact you where you were like, I want to do this as part of my work?
Okay, well, I'm really excited to be here with you too. I already love you. Like I talked to you for 5 minutes. I was like, oh, we can talk all day. Yeah. But I got into this. I mean, listen, I went to school for psychology, and in my undergrad, we learned in like first year university about attachment styles. And I remember reading and like learning about it, and it's so high level, so small, and it's like, oh, you know, these are sort of the temperaments of children, and they don't talk a lot about how it affects you in your adult relationships, and it's very kind of surfacey. And I never even like thought that it was that interesting. I remember kind of glazing over it, being like, okay, cool, pretty simple to understand, whatever. They also didn't teach you about fearful avoidance, which is what I was. So I think I would have related a little more to it if I knew that. But that was my first experience of it. And then I actually got into this work not talking about attachment styles or relationships at all. I got into this work because I was addicted to opioids at a teen, like got addicted after knee surgery, didn't have good coping mechanisms growing up, had a bit of a turbulent childhood to say the least. And I think I just internalized everything and I didn't know how to cope. And I coped by playing soccer, and that was my thing. And eventually what ended up happening is in one of my scouting years, because I was trying to get a full ride scholarship and go off to university, is in one of my scouting years, I had knee surgery, and it was just like, oh, my one coping mechanism was gone. So I actually got into this work through like a lot of deep struggles around that. And I started originally doing a lot of work around the subconscious mind. So working with people, I remember being in a psychology class. I did get a soccer scholarship and went to university. And I was like, on the outside, my life maybe looked normal. On the inside, I was like falling apart.
Totally.
Like just crazy. I kept getting in trouble. There was just a whole lot of stuff. And
this is the origin story I like. Yeah. This is the type of origin story I enjoy.
The honest origin story.
I love it. I'm like, I'm leaned in.
And so I was in a class, and I remember thinking like, I can't like stay here. Like I can't handle everything. I would go to rehab. I went to rehab a couple times in like summers between semesters. I couldn't get my life together. And I remember thinking like, I think I should leave school. And I was in a class and somebody said to me, oh, your conscious mind can't outwill your subconscious mind. And to me, that was like this, like, I felt like, you know, you see these movies and you see these emotional like breakthrough moments. For me, it was like the like sky parted, like the sea parted or whatever the expression is. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh. So all of the times that I'm like, I'm going to get clean, I'm going to get sober, I'm going to delete these people's numbers from my phone, and I tell myself I'm going to do things, and then I go back and I repeat the same behaviors. It's not because I'm weak and not capable of anything and I'm going to fail at life. It's because my subconscious mind is the one that like wants to keep using. And so I got like obsessed with trying to figure out like the subconscious mind. And I would love to say that like changed everything right there. It didn't. I still had like lots of ups and downs for a couple of years on my journey to like sobriety. But then suddenly at like 21 years old, I was sober. And 21 years old, like I started like partying and doing drugs and all these things when I was like 15. And so none of my friends at 21 years old were on a similar journey.
Oh, interesting. Because they were just starting to drink. And their partying was just starting at 21?
Yeah. Yes and no. So like my age group was, I mean, I hung out with a whole bunch of people prior to that were like chaos, right?
Totally.
So I was with the, you know, cut from my own cloth at the time. But I was in an age where like then I was trying to get away from those friends, make new friends. And now everybody at that age was kind of like just in a different path. They were like, just like you said, like they were starting up, and I was like really trying to go a different direction. Yeah. And I remember I had this friend of mine, he was a neighbor. and he lived like down the hall from me. And I remember talking to him and being like, oh, and your subconscious mind and da-da. And I remember he just like looked at me and he said, hey, like you should probably speak to people and tell people who are really interested in this. And I remember
he's like, take it someplace else.
Exactly. I remember being like, damn, I'm just like preaching at everybody.
It's so funny when someone like reflects that back to you. We're like, whoa. I'll never forget. At one of my jobs in New York, I was in a relationship that I was struggling in, and I was just talking about my relationship to this girl, and she goes, hey, we need to work. You've been talking about this for an hour. And I literally was like, oh, like I woke up from my slumber of my like talking and was like, we got it. We do have to work. And I literally was so grateful for her. I'm like, thank you.
For your honesty. Exactly.
I was so grateful. I was like, I'm so sorry.
100%. So in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like my 21-year-old friends don't care like about this.
Totally.
And I like got it and it made sense. And so I started giving free workshops. Like I just like would go and rent library space and give free workshops. And I had people coming to these workshops and showing up. And eventually there was like 150 people coming to these workshops. It was crazy. That was over like the progression of a couple of years. But then I was like, oh, like I need to, like people come after and be like, do you work with clients? And I'd be like, I'm like still in school. I'm figuring it out. And they'd be like, that was fine. Like, I don't care if you're still in school. I don't care if you're 21 or 22 years old. Like, let's work together. Like I liked the workshop. So then I kind of started a business by accident and then worked with clients for a couple of years and then revisited attachment styles actually after working with people on like healing their subconscious core wounds and rewiring their subconscious mind and learning their needs and regulating their nervous system. That was like the work I did first. And then met my husband and had been really single for like 3.5 years, building my business, doing all this stuff, which I did not plan. And I was trying to be single on purpose because I was like new, it was a whole new world for me and I was in a different place. And I met him and I remember being like, I actually told him, I was like, I'm not dating anybody. Seriously, I'm going to go live in an ashram. Like I thought that I was going to go have this like very different like life path and experience. And then he just like showed up and kept trying and kept making an effort. And I really liked him and we got along really well and really easily. And then over time, what ended up happening is I just was like, okay, I love my work. I love what I get to do. I really loved him, but we moved in together after a couple of years of dating and things like shifted. And I was like, what's shifting? I knew that I felt really vulnerable and I would kind of like retreat. And I had done a lot of deep inner work, but not like relationship work. Yeah. And I realized that I still had stuff to sort out. And I realized that he did too. And that's when I actually revisited attachment styles. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's so crazy is when I was working with clients, I would work with them on like healing their subconscious triggers, which is like your relationship baggage, learning your needs and how to meet them yourself, learning to regulate your nervous system. And I was like, oh, when I know somebody's attachment style, they have these exact wounds, they have these exact needs. This is the actual state of their nervous system. And then I was like, oh, I'm doing all this like inner self work with people, but not like relational work. So I need to help people with like boundaries and communication. And I realized each attachment style had really specific patterns of all of those 5 things. And so it was like, oh, if I know somebody's attachment style, I know right away like what their challenges are with their core wounds or triggers, their needs, their nervous system, how they communicate and what their boundaries are. And I was like, oh, I can just work with people's attachment styles, know these things, and then we can do the rewiring work, the actual reconditioning really quickly. And at the same time in my life, I was learning, oh, I have my own communication and boundary issues where I'm not saying things directly. I'm holding things in and I'm resentful. And then I could tell my partner at the time, who's now my husband, I could tell that he like wasn't communicating. And I was like, oh, we both have to learn to be more vulnerable and like speak up and share. And so it was really helpful for me to practice that and learn that firsthand and do that. And then I just ended up pulling that into my practice and doing that work. And that's how it eventually evolved into attachment style work. It's like, okay, here's your attachment style. What's the point of just knowing it unless you can change it? Like there's no point. Otherwise people just identify with it, label themselves that. And so the work that we built through integrated attachment theory was like, here's somebody's attachment style. Here's what your core wounds are going to be, your needs, your nervous system, your boundaries, and your communication patterns. And here's how to literally rewire them all at the subconscious level so that everything can then work much more effectively. And your set point is to be secure, because what secure people have is less triggers. They know their needs. They know how to communicate them. They have healthy boundaries and their nervous system is regulated. So we're just like reverse engineering that process.
Wow. It's powerful that you and there's so many places I want to go, but just to say this, it's powerful that you and your husband both had your fearful avoidance, but still moved forward.
Yeah. So he was dismissive avoidant,
which is
the more avoidant one. And
okay.
do you want to break them down?
I would love that.
Yeah. So the first one that everybody's trying to move towards, obviously, you probably know this, but for your listeners, is secure attachment style. So securely attached kids, they get a lot of approach-oriented behaviors. And it sounds like such a small thing, but it goes such a long way because you grow up in an environment where your parents are really attuned to you. And then if they see you being distressed or sad, they notice it and they approach you to try to help you soothe. And what that conditions a child to feel is like, okay, my emotions are worthy of being seen and heard. I am safe to rely on other people. I'm worthy of love, both on my really good days, but also in my hard moments. And so I can trust that people will be there for me. And so a child grows up in that kind of environment, then they see healthy communication, they internalize all of this conditioning, and they bring that into their relationships. Research says it is about 50% of the population is securely attached.
Interesting. Do you think that?
No.
I'm like, what?
I can never wrap my head around it. I'll be really honest.
Sometimes studies, like there was like someone that said a study the other, they're like 7% of this. I was like, I asked one question and they're like, yeah, that's a great point. I'm like, where's like, who's this? Like 50% of America's like, that's me.
Like, to be perfectly honest.
And all of them are addicts and like, what?
The only thing, so I actually spent a lot of time wondering about this. It doesn't make sense to me. It's the most like cutting edge research, in-depth research that there supposedly is.
They're like, it's actually on rats.
But that's so funny.
They're like 50% of the rats in our study are secure. You're like, okay.
That's so funny. I'm going to tell everybody that.
So there's rat studies that say.
The way that I rationalize in my head has always been like, well, maybe the sample size of people I work with are like all insecurely attached people. So maybe it's the wrong thing. But every time I like say it out loud, I'm like, it's just so crazy to me. But it doesn't move in lockstep with the divorce rate, which is interesting. So you actually see as the secure attachment rate goes up or down, the divorce rate moves in inverse. So like the more people are secure, the lower the divorce rate. The more the secure attachment goes down, the higher the divorce rate. And you're sort of seeing that over generations. So it is interesting. But yeah, I that's not my sample size of people that I see or talk to or work with. And so it's very interesting.
So that's secure.
That's secure. Then you have 3 insecure attachment styles. Okay. So at one end of the continuum is the anxious attachment style. Anxious attachment styles, they grow up with either real or perceived abandonment. Real is the very obvious. Real is like somebody loses a parent at a young age. Somebody has a household where they don't have a father or their mother's not around. And those types of things often cause, these huge abandonment wounds. But what's really interesting about, like, from a neuroscience perspective is small T trauma consistently over time has a very similar impact on the brain as big T trauma, as a singular or just a couple times that we get imprinted with it. So you can have perceived abandonment where parents are very loving, but let's say it's something like they work all the time, then a child grows up in an environment where like love is there, love is taken away. Love is there, love is taken away. And so anxious kids in this kind of environment, they adapt by being like, okay, how do I not get love taken away? And so they constantly fear it being gone. And so they have their big core wounds or triggers that we put in here for integrated attachment theory is the fear of abandonment, the fear of being alone, excluded, disliked, rejected, unloved, not good enough. Those are like their biggest triggers. And they obviously feel really unsafe when love feels pulled away. So those are the things they have to rewire to become secure. It's a big part of the healing process. But that's what you'll see with anxious attachment styles. And they adapt to these fears by being like, oh, let me people please you more. Let me win you over. Let me try to get really close to you as much as I can. And I'll just forego my boundaries to please you. And they self-silence and they self-abandon as a means of trying to just maintain proximity to people. So they're usually very charming and lovely and charismatic, but they're kind of suffering in silence because they're never actually taking up space. So that's your anxious attachment style. And like, obviously we talk about this in the context of this can happen in childhood. You develop your attachment style in early childhood, but conditioning is always happening. So somebody could be securely attached and then go through a really painful loss of a parent as a teenager and then still become anxious after that. Or somebody could be secure going into a relationship, then that person, God forbid, passes away and they could leave that relationship being anxiously attached. So things can change. It's not just childhood. The other end of the continuum is the dismissive avoidant. So this is what my husband was when we met. He had done some work already, so he wasn't like a really strong dismissive avoidant, but dismissive avoidants grow up with more childhood emotional neglect. So this can be like very overt neglect, like oh my gosh, parents are never home. Like the children are alone at night by themselves till really late. But that's not usually what it is. A lot of times it's more covert neglect. So it's usually things like structure, stability, order. But, parents are not attuned. And they usually didn't have that attunement themselves. So what ends up taking place a lot of the time is that a child might cry or be sad or express emotions, and the parents just are not there to be like, oh, are you okay? Or are you good? They might say like, hey, don't be a crybaby, figure it out, go get stuff sorted, or come back when you're okay. And there just isn't this emotional attunement. So a child in that environment gets conditioned to go, okay, well, this part of me that's emotional, it's flawed. This part of me is inherently wrong. It doesn't get my needs met. It doesn't get me close to people. So a child learns to suppress this part of themselves deeply, and they end up becoming very afraid of expressing themselves that way as an adult. And so as adults, their big core wounds or triggers are like the fear of being seen as defective if they're too vulnerable or too open, the fear of being seen as weak, the fear of relying on people and then feeling helpless or powerless, the big fear of being trapped or engulfed in the wrong relationship. And they usually feel very unsafe in a conflict, like emotionally unsafe, because they haven't had modeling for like, here's what we do, here's how we hash it out, here's what we talk through things. So as adults, they're usually slower to move into commitment. They're very guarded. They keep their walls up. They're not very great at being vulnerable. It doesn't come naturally to them because they see it as a kind of shameful thing. And so they end up being people who a lot of times, this isn't all avoidance, but a lot of times if somebody's a true avoidant and they've never done any work, they kind of like show up okay at the beginning, but then when things get real and they actually attach, they get afraid and they start pushing away and shutting down. So that's the dismissive avoidant. And then the last one is the fearful avoidant, also known as the disorganized attachment style. And disorganized individuals grow up with the overarching theme being chaos. So a lot of times it's things like, these kind of more extreme things, more traditionally, things like a parent's an alcoholic or a parent's in active addiction or a parent has narcissistic personality disorder. And basically the overarching theme, and we can have this in more extremes, but we can have this in slower, like smaller doses in ways too. The overarching theme is like the child doesn't know what they're going to get. So even if you had parents who had a tumultuous relationship and kids are put in the middle of that divorce, that could be another thing that would create something like this. But basically, if you just use the analogy, a more extreme analogy, let's say mom's an alcoholic. It's like, okay, mom comes home one day and she's drinking and she's very loving. She's had a few drinks. She's in a good mood. She's loving. And so a child's like, oh, love is good. Love is safe. I can trust love. And then another day, mom's had too many drinks and she's angry and she's cruel. And you're like, wait, love is terrifying and will really hurt me. And so then you end up getting wired or conditioned to think that love is these two things. It's both really good and really bad. And so children who are fearful avoidance usually become extremely hypervigilant. They are really good at attuning to people. Like they read micro expressions and body language and tone of voice so well because that's how they learn to attach. That's how they learn to cope. And I remember working with a client once and she said, I could tell by the way that my mom shut the door when she got home if I should like close the door to my room or not. And it's like you learn to read between the lines all the time and be really hypervigilant as your attachment strategy to just learn to navigate a really confusing or really difficult environment. And so fearful avoidants have these competing associations. They have like the fear of abandonment because they have this anxious side to them. And so they have this wound around, oh my gosh, will I be abandoned? But then they have this avoidance side to them. We're like, wait, don't get too close to me.
True.
So they fear being trapped or engulfed or helpless if they rely on people. But then they also have this wound of betrayal where they don't really trust people or the environment or the future because they're always kind of on high alert. So they have this sort of anxious and avoidant side. They often pinball back and forth. And so those are your 4 attachment styles.
Wow. Something that's always come up for me, and it was even coming up for me when you were describing the anxious and then the avoidant, is it always seems like women are anxious and men are avoidant. And it almost seems like the way that that child was trained with anxious to be people-pleasing, to attune, to read energy is celebrated as a woman or is more acceptable as a woman. And then to, suck it up, to not express is more like okay as a man. What has been your experience in like looking at different attachment styles and how they relate to gender?
Yeah, 100%. So you nailed it. So generally, it's like, I think people, what's so interesting is they think this attachment style is like this fixed thing that you have in childhood, all these things. And it's like, there are so many influences. Your parents are obviously the biggest influence, but our culture, our society, all of these things. I remember, for just as an example or an analogy, I had a client once and she was this gymnast, and she grew up and she was training all the time, and her parents were super secure, super healthy marriage, but she would get up really early, go to the gym with her coach, go to school all day, go from school right to the gym for another 3-4 hours in the evenings, and then come home and eat dinner and go to bed. And her coach was very unhealthy, and she developed an anxious attachment style because her coach was very hot and cold and touch and go. And so he was a huge source of her conditioning, because conditioning is whatever we're exposed to through repetition and emotion. So
say that again.
Yeah. Conditioning is whatever we're exposed to through repetition and emotion.
Okay.
Repetition and emotion.
Whatever we're exposed to through repetition and emotion. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So whatever we consistently get exposed to that creates emotional imprints for us or emotional experiences, that's actually how neural pathways in our brain fire and wire. And so anything where we keep having this emotional experience, especially the more repeated it is, that's how we're shaped. So when you look at conditioning through that lens, you're like, oh, I understand why attachment styles aren't so fixed, is because it's going to be those types of influences. So what's interesting is, like, first of all, because of culture and society, you're going to see, exactly to your point, it is more celebrated for women to be more people pleasing, to try to win over approval. Like, obviously that's a big part of conditioning in society. And it's much more conditioned into men. Like, hey, stiff upper lip, don't be a crybaby. And often you'll see parents treat their children in different ways for that reason, which is going to lead to these different conditioned outputs. But also we have all these other societal influences at the same time. Kids at school, teachers, coaches, all these other people who can play a role in your life that can also influence some of that conditioning over time, which is why you statistically see anxious attachment styles skew more to women, and then dismissive avoidance skew more to men.
Yeah, it seems more acceptable. I feel like a lot of the narrative is like women that are anxious trying to get avoidant men to like respond.
A lot of it.
It's so much like, when I was dating, it was like so much of the content was like, get him to respond. Like it would be like this strategizing with avoidance.
Yeah.
Like it was like how to adjust who you are to get an avoidant to respond. And I'm like, whoa, it's like, but if you get them to respond, they're still going to be avoidant. Like, do you think that avoidant needs to know they're avoidant to heal?
Okay, so really good question. First thing, just to touch on this that you said, is that the reason we are attracted to, the reason people who are anxious are more attracted to avoidance is because we are most attracted to what's familiar to us. Our subconscious is responsible for 95+% of all of our beliefs, our thoughts, our emotions, our actions. And our subconscious mind wants familiarity because it equates it to safety and thus survival. And so then you have to ask yourself the question, okay, so what's most familiar? It's the way you treat yourself. And so if you are anxiously attached or anxious leaning, then how do you treat yourself? You put yourself last, you dismiss your own feelings, you avoid your own emotions and your needs, you forego your own boundaries. So what's attractive to you? Somebody who mirrors that back to you. And so
interesting.
Yeah. So, and what's so interesting on the flip side is dismissive avoidants are in this very preoccupied relationship to their own time and space. And they're always worrying about, when do I have time to myself and my own space? When can I do my own thing? And so strangely enough, they find anxious people very attractive because it mirrors to them how they treat themselves too. And
Interesting.
Yeah. So we have this like pattern that's happening. And that's why, like, unfortunately, so many people like intellectualize attachment styles. They're like, this is your attachment style and this is it. And it's like, no, like there's all this subconscious stuff happening that, like, once you understand, you can now work to rewire and change.
Right.
And that's where then we have secure relationships. So to your point, yes, like so much of it is like, oh, anxious people like trying to change themselves to then get be able to win over the avoidant. And first of all, that never works. That's never how it will work.
Waste of time.
Yeah. It's good to understand people so you don't take things as personally. That can be useful.
Yeah, it's
like,
true.
oh, hey, this is about them and this is why they do what they do. Cool. It's not about me. So you're refeeding these core wounds that you have. But other than that, then it's like avoidance actually respond best to hearing what your needs are and you having boundaries and you having a strong sense of self. And it's so interesting, but I would work with a lot of people in their attachment styles who are anxious or even fearful avoidant. And it would be like, hey, if you want this relationship to work, like, first of all, yes, it's very helpful for a dismissive avoidant to know that they're dismissive avoidant. A lot of dismissive avoidants end up thinking they're secure because they're not emotional. They're like, oh, I'm the non-emotional.
True.
They're like, I'm the secure one. It's like, well, if you're emotionally unavailable, it's not secure.
True.
And
I dated a dismissive avoidant. He was like, I'm just chill, dude.
Yeah.
He's like, you're just a bulldog and I'm just chill. I'm like, okay.
Did you think you were anxious?
You
really read as like fearful avoidant in your past to me.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
I literally was like, she's about to say I'm secure.
But no, in your past.
No, I was in my past. For sure. Feel very disorganized.
Okay,
very disorganized. Mostly I think anxious. And then I think that got like traumatized out of me where I was like so anxious and then it was like not okay.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I can't even be like in my first love. I was so anxious. Oh my gosh, the pain. And then we broke up and it was almost like a part of me came forward that was like, I can't be that again. So then avoidant came forward. And then I was avoidant in that next relationship with someone that was anxious. Yeah. And then after that, it was like dating a dismissive avoidant. But yeah, and it's so fascinating because I thought he was a narcissist because it was so self, but it was really just like him wanting his own space, him wanting to do his own thing, him wanting to like be alone. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so it's really interesting. A lot of fearful avoidants or disorganized, they think that they are anxious when they start, but because you can lean either way. And whoever you're with, if you're with somebody more avoidant, you'll really lean into your anxious side. But then if somebody's really anxious, they'll polarize you to your avoidant side. And it's very like textbook for a disorganized attachment style to kind of have both sides. And also for them to be very deep. Disorganized attachment styles have friggin' superpowers. Yeah. Like when
we're amazing.
And once you start healing, like, and obviously like you've done the work. And so once you come on the other side, you keep all of your gifts and your superpowers. Yes. But like, it's very, very disorganized to be like when people sit down and to have that, the beautiful, because how they attach, right? They're like, I need to know everything about you and be able to read you so I can predict you so I can feel safe.
Yeah, totally.
And so they're always like, I joke that like fearful avoidants or disorganized are like the human lie detectors. Like they notice everything. Yeah. And that's a gift. And then when you heal, you get to kind of keep the beautiful side of that, of the depth and the care and the compassion and the empathy and all these things. But then you also learn to self-regulate and self-soothe and you work through your triggers. And so you have, anyways, that was what I read.
No, for real. It's so true.
Speaking with you.
I think I just like, and I think my disorganized, it was almost like being with the dismissive avoidant. I became avoidant myself because I couldn't be anxious anymore. Like it was too exhausting to be anxious all the time. So I became like avoidant in it too. Well, actually maybe I was, but I always have turned it on me.
Yeah. The way that you'll know really is that when your heart, like your anxious side is so loud when you're disorganized. So you feel really anxious, but you'll see bouts in your relationship history where you really did try to push people away, where like you felt like, oh, they could really hurt me. So you threaten to break up or you push away or you test a lot or you're kind of
that was my whole bag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always,
so
always breaking up. Like I actually feel so bad about that.
Me too. I did that too. I've called so many exes when I started doing this work. I'm so sorry.
You were like doing the steps.
I really, truly,
like making amends.
Making amends, 100%.
Oh my God, I actually like have thought about that and they'd be like, please lose my fucking number, bitch.
I'm sure. People I was in relationships with felt that. They were all so kind about it and so nice. And it was actually very well received. But like I was like, hey, making amends. I believe in that. And I left all of those conversations knowing I was doing it for myself. Good. And left those conversations feeling like, A, that went way better than I thought. I probably thought it was like, maybe that was weird for them. I don't know. But B, I felt relief. I was like, oh, I felt like a purge to be able to be, because I did the same thing. Like that was very me at the time would be like, oh, like push away, threaten to leave relationships. One person, poor person I was with for like 4.5 years. I swear I would threaten to break up like every 2 weeks. Like I'd be like, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I hate that. I feel so bad about that.
But that's okay. But that's like, so that's very, so that's not an anxious.
Oh, I was anxious. That was like my power move.
Yeah.
Do you know
but that's like, that's disorganized all day. Anxious attachment styles don't do that because they always want proximity. So they won't get to that point. They might say little things like, do you even care about me? Or they might be like kind of critical, but like, they will not be like, let's break. Like that
was like my thing. And then they'd be like, no, I want to stay. And I'd be like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you wanted that. You were doing it to see if they would stay. Yeah. But you're willing to push somebody away because you're so hurt. And that's the thing about fearful avoidance, aka disorganized, is that you love love and you want love, but you've been conditioned to believe that it will really hurt you. So the more you love, the more scary it is.
Yeah.
And you have this strange relationship between like loving and needing connection and feeling threatened by it at the same time. And like maybe you had experiences where you felt like, oh, love was almost bittersweet. Like you love, but then the more you loved, the more like pain was there and associated with it. And that's again, that's like not a dismissive, avoidant, or an anxious thing too much. In their own ways, there's flavors of that, but not in that form.
So in my dismissive, avoidant brain, how would I even say, because even you're like, you realize that love is more pain. How is that not true?
Okay. So
because isn't it like literally?
Okay, so here's the work. So this is why I like that question was why I like ended up doing the work I do for a living, is because I wondered the same thing. I'm like, but love is so freaking hard and so scary, and like why? And I felt like, okay, there has to be a different way. And so I always use the analogy of like a bear in the woods. Like if you imagine that tomorrow you walk into the woods and you see a bear and the bear chases you, and thank goodness you run away and you're safe, but you have to go into the woods the next day. Well, what does your mind do? Your brain is like, the bear, like you're bracing for the bear. The trees move in the wind and you're like, the bear's going to chase me. So our mind is wired to hang on to negative things more than positive. When the bear's chasing you, you're not like, oh, look at how beautiful the flowers are. Like you're remembering, you're thinking of the bear and its teeth. Like that's what you're remembering from the memory. And then we reproject it back out onto our environment as a way to protect ourselves, right? That's why the next day you go into the woods and you're like, oh my God, the bear, even if there's no bear. So that's great if we're being chased by a bear, that protects us, but like that's not the world we live in. And so what happens is when we go through things as a kid, if you felt abandoned, if you felt betrayed, if you felt like you couldn't really trust your environment growing up, which is like the biggest core wound of fearful, avoidant, or disorganized attachment style, which is, this is like the big body of work that we published like almost a decade ago. And it's like, hey, these are the big wounds. And then also this fear of being trapped in the wrong relationship or with the wrong person. Fearful avoidants usually want commitment until it's really there and it's really big. And then they kind of panic a little bit too. But essentially you'll have this part of you that's like, you have all of these wounds. So now your brain's going to, as you start to fall in love and really attach, now your brain is going to naturally project those likelihoods back out onto the relationship in the present and the future. And so the first really big pillar of healing is to rewire those wounds. You're not born with them. They got conditioned into you because of how you interpreted and stored painful past experiences, and they're solvable problems. And they're like really solvable problems. Like they're like, as somebody who has spent a lot of time doing this work, like those are not even things that like come up for like years for me. Like that's not even a part of the reality. So I'm happy to get into like, if you want to talk about tools and stuff, I can go into a tool. That. Okay. So this is one of the first tools of rewiring. Okay. So first thing is to identify those wounds. So probably like if you're thinking fearful, avoidant, there's probably fears of being abandoned is a big one. Fears of being rejected is probably a pretty sensitive one. Betrayed is like the big one, big one.
My little girl's like, I want you to know about betrayed.
Yeah.
She's here. She's listening. She's like, make sure you tell her about betrayal.
That's the biggest one. And that's like the true fearful avoidant one that we publish, because anxious is like, you have that anxious side. So you have like the abandoned. There's usually this deep sense too of like alone, not in the fear of being alone because you like to be by yourself, but in the sense that like when things get hard, it's always on me. I'm always alone to deal with it. And this sort of like inherent loneliness. And when things get hard, I'd fix it for everybody and nobody's here for me in that same way. So that's a big one. And then usually there's a fear of being helpless if you rely too much on other people. It's like if I had to exclusively rely on people and like they had to take care of me, like I don't know if I can really feel safe in that. So there's that sense. And then a fear of being trapped around like big commitment. So those are like the overarching really big ones. And there's usually a little bit of one, actually a decent sized one of unworthiness, always having to earn your worth, overcompensate, prove your worth. So those are like the big wounds. Those are like the fearful avoidant wounds. You're not born with them. They get conditioned into you through repetition and emotion that fires and wires neural pathways in our brain. So we have to rewire them. So first step is to find the wound that you're working on and its opposite. I usually recommend work on one or two at a time. So let's say, for example, just to keep the example simple, it's like, okay, I'm going to be abandoned. Okay, I'm worthy of connection. Okay. So that's the opposite. If somebody has a not good enough wound, I'm good enough. Unworthy, I'm worthy. It's just the opposite. Really easy. Step two is I don't believe in affirmations. So the reason I don't believe in affirmations is because your conscious mind speaks language and your subconscious mind doesn't speak language at all. And your wounds are not conscious. Nobody's waking up being like, today, I'm going to tell myself all day long that I'm not good enough and see how I feel. Nobody's consciously choosing that. So the wound is something subconsciously stored and subconsciously projected, which means you have to speak in the language of your subconscious mind. The language of the subconscious mind is emotions and imagery. Okay, so step one is what's the core wound and its opposite? I am going to be abandoned. I'm worthy of connection. If it's I'm going to be betrayed, I'm worthy of loyalty, or I can trust. So you're finding the opposite, step one. Step two, we have to speak in emotion and imagery to our subconscious. And you can actually see an example of this if I say like, whatever you do not think of a pink elephant. Like you think of a pink elephant, your subconscious flashes a pink elephant, your conscious mind understands language, but like your subconscious didn't even register that, right? So what we do here is we're like, how do we get emotions and imagery so that it lands at the subconscious level? Well, every memory we ever have is just a container for emotions and images. If you think of your favorite childhood memory, and let's pretend you're like playing at the beach or on the playground, you might see like the red bucket when you're building a sandcastle in your mind's eye when you think of that memory. And you might smile or laugh when you tell that old story. So memory actually is how we speak to our subconscious mind. So now we're like, okay, step one, I'm going to be abandoned. I'm worthy of connection. Step two, we want to come up with 10 memories of how we actually felt worthy of connection. And you can either pick times where like people really did show up for you in hard moments and actually like get your subconscious to see that and realize like, okay, people really can be there for me. People do care about me. Or you can pick characteristics of who you truly are. Like here's not when I'm people pleasing, when nobody's watching you, like I guarantee, like when nobody's watching, you are a deeply compassionate, empathetic, deep, meaning seeking person. And that's who you are. And those are beautiful qualities. So what you would do is to elicit memory around them is write those qualities out and then times that you exemplified those in your memory. So now you're like, okay, we are getting our conscious mind to speak to our subconscious mind through those 10 memories. And then we record them down. Like record yourself saying them out loud. And we want to listen back to them when we are in a suggestible state. So when our brain is producing more alpha brain waves. That's usually the first hour you wake up, the last hour before you go to sleep, after a meditation, breath work, any of that stuff. And so what we do now is it takes 2 to 3 minutes a day. The reason we use 10 across 21 days is because neuroscience shows us that that's how long it takes when we are in a suggestible state to really build new neural pathways. And by the way, suggestible state means like your subconscious soaks up this information better, okay? So now you're actually listening back to yourself, going through these 10 memories across a 21-day cycle. And we've had 60,000 people go through this exercise in our programs, and people who are like, I committed every day, I didn't miss a day. I really felt about the memories and visualized the memories when I did them. Took them 2 to 3 minutes a day. And people reported a 99.7% NPS score in healing and moving through those core wounds. So like, if you think of those times, where you felt betrayed and you threatened to break up, like the reason we do those things is first because of the core wounds, right? The reason that people cling in relationships when they're anxious is because it's sponsored by the core wound of abandonment. The reason we push people away when we're scared of betrayal is we're protecting ourselves from that wound. Every behavior we have that we don't like is first at a root cause level sponsored by the wound. And the way to heal is to rewire the wounds that are creating those behaviors. And then the whole dynamic shifts and changes.
Wow. I remember Jack Cornfield, I think, or Jack Canfield. I think he does the Mind movies. Have you heard of those?
No, I haven't, but I know who he is. I had a friend who did like his programs back in the day.
Back in the day, OG. I remember I was at this like dinner, and I was sitting at this dinner with these like 10 billionaire women that had done makeup brands and all these things. And they were like Mind movies. And Mind movies basically is like a movie of images that you basically elicits emotion, and you just use the images and the emotion of the thing. Usually there's like a music in the background that helps you bring up the emotion, and you just watch it over and over again. And it's like the Mind movies. It's so interesting. You know I'm like, I need to think of memories, because I'm like, I have a hard time thinking of my like best memories. I think what has helped me is looking at old photos, where I look at photos and I'm like, okay, does this photo bring me back to a time where I can kind of attach it to a memory that's good? But sometimes it's hard for me to think of memories. Yeah.
So what you would do is like, if you have a hard time thinking of memories, first you would try to sit with it for a little, because it's so worth like taking the time to first get them all elicited out. But you can just think of characteristics about yourself. So if it was like you're working on, I can have loyalty, okay, well, why am I worthy? Like, what characteristics would I think are great in somebody who's worthy and deserving of loyalty or who should be able to trust? Oh, somebody who's also loyal. What's a time that I was loyal?
Love that.
And then you're soliciting memories that way. So if you ever feel stuck on just coming up with memories, that's your kind of work around there.
That's a good one. So it's like, so as a fearful avoidant, I'm afraid of betrayal.
Yes.
So I would think, what is a time where I've been not betrayed, right?
Yeah, where I've had trust or loyalty. You also want to make sure you speak in the positive framing.
In the positive. So
because otherwise your subconscious your subconscious also doesn't hear knots. So it doesn't hear language framed in the negative.
Yes or no. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is a time where I
had loyalty or I could trust. Somebody did something trustworthy.
And then I run through like 10 things that like elicit like those positive memories and listens to those. Okay, that's so fascinating. Because I think with all of the attachments, it sounds like, and I don't know if you feel like this is true, a lot of people I think are using them as identifiers for who they are. I mean, I'm sure that's so tough for you.
It breaks
like,
my heart.
Triggers me so much. Like I, as a behavioral scientist, will watch like Love is Blind, Love Island. Like it's like my behavioral science degree. I turn it on and I'm like, guys, this is what's going on.
That's like my guilty pleasure too. It's like reality television. I'm like, you can study humans even more. Like
the best.
You can just watch what they do. I love it. Yeah.
Have you seen couples therapy?
No, but I've wanted to. I've actually seen clips of it on YouTube. But
that's a really, really good one. It's a really good one. Her therapy, she's amazing. Her therapy style isn't like my therapy style, but it's too like letting them do whatever. I like a little bit more like
working through it
like a little bit more like she's like, how do you feel about that? Okay, how do you feel about that? And I'm like, you see what's going on, but there's no like
solution.
Yeah. Like it seems like it's a very long therapeutic process of being longer than like years to have them get to the place. And I'm like, you need to give them something.
No, I am the same way. I'm laughing because I'm like, okay, I feel like I think you're one of the people I've met in my entire life that I'm like, I feel like I've like nothing I've heard about you yet where I'm like, oh, we differ on that. Like it's freaking me out. I'm like, okay. Like, this is kind of weird.
Maybe I'm just so much above your point. I'm like mirroring everything to you.
But I'm hearing that because that's honestly the biggest piece of feedback. People tell me like, oh, I come here and we like do the work. We do the work because I'm like, give me the structure, give me the order, give me like the breakthrough each time. Like we need to actually be able to get to the other side of something. And I get a little bit frustrated too when I see stuff like that. Where I'm like, okay, but like you're figuring out why, but like now what? Like tell me the resolution, tell me the action steps. That's why we like built our schools. Like the whole thing is just like all these exercises for what to do in all the situations.
Because I feel like this is a story I have in this whatever, but it's like I feel like sometimes in the space people get rewarded for just empathizing with people at the state that they're at and not moving them towards where they should. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like validating the experience, which is important, but it's like, what is the actual steps to take them where they need to go? So even on the concept of like doing the work, people talk about doing the work. The subconscious reprogramming tool is such a good one that you just explained. What else do you consider doing the work? Like when someone's like, I want to do the work to heal my attachment, what should I do?
Okay, love it. So we have 5 major pillars. We kind of have a bonus 6th, but the 5 are the big ones. So the first one is rewiring your core wounds. So it's like, we get a little assessment for people to identify them.
Good one.
We talked about the wounds already. Like most people could hear what theirs were from the conversation. And then it's to do that exercise first. There's some other exercises to rewire, but that's like a really good starting one for people right now. Otherwise, I would go on for like 9 hours. So that's the first thing. Start rewiring your wounds. And I literally cannot stress how meaningful it is. I've seen thousands of people go through this. Like doing that work will change people's life. And it's also really important that you do things from your own life, your own evidence, because that's what your mind believes. It's your reality. So it's more tangible. We lock in better. So it's really powerful to tee that up. And also, as somebody who's done the work, the biggest thing that I noticed on the other side, because I had all of the wounds, is that your mind becomes so much more still. Like I used to always be in some kind of drama in my mind of like, I can't trust this person, or oh my gosh, is this person leaving, or is this person going to control me? And like to have that gone and to have space to like design my life and learn and create like is so beneficial. So step 1, rewire your core wounds. That's your relationship baggage. Your core wounds are they're your core triggers. That's your baggage you bring from the past into the present, and we don't have to. Second thing is we need to learn what our needs are and how to meet them ourselves. So Gabor Mate has a wonderful quote. It's one of my favorite quotes for this. And he says, trauma are the things that happened that shouldn't have happened. So the obvious abuse, that kind of stuff that creates core wounds. But also trauma are the things that didn't happen that should have happened. And so those are your deeply unmet needs from your childhood. And what's really interesting is that when we have deeply unmet needs, it makes us really vulnerable to being with the wrong people because there would be times that, like, let's say somebody felt deeply unseen as a child. One of the biggest traps that people fall into in narcissistic relationships is that if they felt deeply unseen and they're always the ones seeing everybody else, when somebody comes along and makes you feel seen, your brain like lights up like fireworks going off. And that will be different things. Sometimes it's in narcissistic relationships, sometimes it's feeling unseen, not protected, not deeply cared for, not supported. And narcissists in the love bombing stage, they're so good at making you feel all those things. So what happens is wherever we have deeply unmet needs, we actually can be a little bit unstable in our lives because we'll kind of dive into things to seek out those needs because we're dying to get them. And a big part of our healing is before we even start to know our needs and go share them with people in our lives and try to resource them, we have to start self-sourcing them. And so what I get people to do is go through what are your deepest unmet needs from childhood. Write out mom, write out dad. What are the things that you always needed that you felt like you couldn't get access to? Sometimes it's safety, support, care. Sometimes it's empathy. Sometimes it's to be seen or heard. Sometimes it's for somebody to just be present with you. Like, write out those needs. And then we actually have to be able to resource them within ourselves. And because of how we build neural networks in the brain, what I get people to do is like pick 2 or 3 needs and you're going to become a master at meeting them yourself every day for 21 days until that feels like it's your new baseline. So if it's like, validation, cool. Journal 3 of your wins every day. Like just start doing these things on a daily basis where you're starting to give to yourself what you couldn't get. And it does 2 things. It heals that void within you of trauma because we actually grieve those things that we really needed and we couldn't get access to as a child. And secondly, it's your emotional immunity to ending up in the wrong relationships because we're not going to, I always say to people, like, you're going to put up with breadcrumbs when you're starving. So you're going to be like, let me just do anything to get near this person because I don't have access to this need. So, oh my gosh, I'm going to chase after them. I'm going to do all these things that go against my standards or my sense of self or my boundaries because I'm starving. But it's like, no. Once you learn how to self-source your needs, you stabilize yourself and you end up in much better situations where you can uphold your standards. So that's that second pillar of healing is like audit your needs, start meeting them yourself on a daily basis. Obviously, certain attachment styles tend to have specific needs. Like anxious attachment styles need a lot more validation, reassurance. They want to feel like they're wanted, like they're a priority. They want to feel like they have depth of connection and intimacy. Dismissive avoidance, they obviously want their freedom, autonomy, independence, but they also deeply need to feel empathized with, attuned to. They need to feel like these are things they didn't get in their childhood. They need to feel like somebody supports them and actually really cares about them. They need sincere forms of acknowledgement and appreciation. Like each attachment style has different ones, right? So learn your needs, meet them yourself. The other really interesting caveat to that second pillar is also that we don't properly receive from people when we haven't learned to self-source. And you can see this like with anxious attachment styles, for example, that anxious attachment styles, they often end up in situations where, let's say somebody comes and they validate the anxious attachment style. They're like, I give the analogy of like a hole in your bucket. Yeah. Somebody pours into your bucket. You're like, oh my God, it feels so good that somebody's doing this for me. They're meeting my need, but there's a hole. It just like leaks right back out and then you need more and more. Yeah. But you actually can receive properly from people when your subconscious has this as a part of its comfort zone because you've learned to give it to yourself. So now your subconscious sees it as familiar and safe. And so now you can actually receive. Wow. So that's our second pillar. I feel like there's, I don't know if you want to jump in and say anything. I feel like I'm just fire hosing information.
No, I'm like diagnosing everyone in my head and then myself at the same time. And I was just, something that was coming up with the meeting your own needs and sort of the responses. I work with women a lot in metamorphosis on food and their relationship to food in their body. And what I've noticed a lot of times too, it's like how the attachment styles and the wounding within that can come out within their relationship with food. Yeah. So like if they're trying to soothe externally, if they're trying to find peace externally, if they're trying to numb, if they're trying to find like love, like you can, if you are not having, especially if you have an anxious attachment, those needs met and you don't know how to meet them yourselves, people will go to food as that source. Yes. Yeah. Or even if you're avoidant and you don't want to feel, so you numb.
Yes.
And it's so interesting how I've seen that over the years just be like a space and place where a lot of the anxious or a lot of the attachment wounding comes out.
Yeah, 100%. And what's so interesting is it's because it's what our earliest programming about food. Well, food is when you're being breastfed. Yep. And what's so interesting about breastfeeding is that when a mother's breastfeeding her child, the child's being held. So the child feels comfort, they feel safety. And there's a tremendous amount of oxytocin produced between the parent and child when breastfeeding. And oxytocin is a bonding neurochemical. So a lot of our deepest conditioning about food is food equals the need for emotional connection, safety, and comfort. And so a lot of people, when they're like starving for food, but they're not actually starving, they're like maybe binge eating. They're binge eating because they're starving for comfort, safety, and connection. And it's like we will resource needs, exactly to your point, exactly like you said, in these other ways of trying to co-regulate with substances or with food or different things outside of ourselves when we haven't learned to properly regulate within ourselves or through people in a healthy way. And so people end up using, okay, I'm co-regulating with food or I'm co-regulating with substances or whatever it might be, because that's our way of trying to resource those needs deep down. And that's why learning to meet your own needs and identify what they are and meet them in healthy ways, that is like so powerful for the healing process.
It's huge. Okay, so that was second. What's the third?
Third is nervous system regulation.
Okay, I actually wanted to ask about the nervous system. It's funny. We were like talking to our audience the other day and they were like, nervous system regulation, like everyone wants to know about it. And I'm like, okay. I don't know. I'm just like, this is what I think. And this is why I have that energy. Let me just back up and say, in my truth, I had a situation recently where I regulated my nervous system for the first time in I think 3 months, and it changed my whole life and my personality when I had my nervous system regulated. I was like, whoa. So I realized the impact of the nervous system. And what I also think is it's like, it requires you to pause, to, like it requires, I think people want the information of it, but then they're not doing the work of it. Because it's easy to find information of how to regulate your nervous system, but why is it so still a conversation?
Okay. So, I love this. Okay. I'm like, wow, I'm so excited to talk about this. Okay, so I've had a lot of people over the years who come to me who, back when I was running my practice, before I was running our online programs, and they would come to me and they'd be like, oh, I've done all the somatic work. So I did a certification in somatic experiencing, which is a beautiful thing.
Yep.
Nervous system regulation is definitely a pillar of healing. But I would see these people and like, God bless them. I sometimes would see people and they come in and they would be like, oh, I got triggered. Okay, I'm going to regulate my nervous system. And then like 2 days later,
don't even.
The same freaking thing would trigger them and they'd be like, okay, regulate my nervous system. And the problem is that like, if you have that core wound where you think the bear is coming and you can't, and you haven't dealt with that, you can keep being like, the bear is coming, regulate my nervous system. The bear is coming. And the bear is coming is the analogy for I'm going to be trapped. I'm going to be betrayed. I'm going to be abandoned. And you can keep regulating your nervous system, but then you're going to have to go back and do that same thing over and over again. And like, hello, like you got to go deeper into the roots. So that's actually why I put the core wound work first, because if people just do nervous system regulation, it's a very good soothing mechanism in the moment, but like on its like as a standalone thing, you're not going to get real results long-term. So it's helpful. It's really important. There's definitely a part of nervous system regulation that is also meeting an unmet need of self-attunement, because we get into like, what am I feeling in my body? What's going on here? So there's a lot about nervous system regulation. We kind of have like a high level and there's like sort of stages to it. So high level, you can do meditation every day. Really good for your nervous system, really good for practicing self-attunement, going inwards, mindfulness exercises, breath work. All of these things very much regulate the nervous system. They're excellent. At a deeper level,
really fast, I want to say about self-attunement, that is something I've heard of, but it's hitting me differently, especially for a lot of the women of our audience, and including my previous self, myself sometimes now, as someone that's deeply sensitive, can read people, all of that. Like, I'm a master at attuning, but it is like, I'm just kind of clocking that more deeply, that for people that want to be in their power and in their purpose and in their own experience and in their body and in their voice and all the things that people want, it requires you experiencing acts of self-attunement. And so meditation is a good one to do that. And just like being in the experience of like just attuning to how you're feeling and what you sort of need.
Yes. I love that. And I love that you said that. And, you know, I feel like I know so much about you because you told me, I talked to you at the beginning and I was like, wow, you're so similar to me. So now I'm just projecting all of my things onto you. I'm like, okay. So if you're what I imagine, because this is what I went through and I feel like we have a lot in common, is when you're so good at self-attuning, you're also kind of like mildly dissociated because you're floating outside of yourself all the time. I
used to be like, I have legs. Like someone would be like, I like your outfit. And I'd be like, what? I would look down and be like, I have a body. Like I no joke would be like, what are they talking about? Like I've had sometimes people be like, oh my God, you look beautiful. I'm like, I wouldn't even know what they were talking about. I'm like, who?
I hear you. And like, it's one of those things where when you're forced to be so good at like attuning to people to survive and to navigate, you kind of get into a space where you're like, what is happening inside of me? Like, I don't even know. And so to your point, that's very common for people who are even anxious can be a little bit like that. Fearful ones are the most like that as a general rule. Dismissive avoidance really struggle to self-attune too, though, but they don't attune to people as much. They attune to like things in their environment, like facts and learning. They're very dissociated through trying to soothe and regulate through like their hobbies or because they didn't have anybody to help them co-regulate as a kid. Yeah. So you'll see these different themes, but part of healing is like learning to actually come back to yourself. And we'll get into it in the boundaries piece in a little bit, but like you can't be good at setting boundaries if you don't even know what you feel in your body in real time because you don't even know when a boundary is violated. And so
true.
Yeah. So coming back to you and being like, what am I feeling? What am I needing? All these things and practicing getting into your body and noticing what's happening is so huge for that reason. So that's very good for regulating the nervous system, meditation, breath work, all that stuff is like a daily habit. So we're wiring in our capacity through repetition over time to like be attuned to ourselves and to get there. There's other things that like we could go way down a rabbit hole, but the completion cycles, learning to discharge emotional energy when you're stressed, things like that can help.
Interesting, like yelling, sighing. What do you mean?
So, I'm not
I was like, what's going on here?
So there's a lot of research that goes into like animals when they go through something stressful. And you see like an animal
book with the zebra.
Yeah, like exactly. Okay, I forget the name of the book.
Don't ask me. That's as far as my info goes.
I know exactly what you meant.
Zebra book.
Yeah. So what you'll see is like a lot of animals after that. Even if you think of like my
cat,
lion,
anytime I hold her, she jumps off me and she's like,
literally, yeah. Or like that would happen with my dog. Like he would when he would go through something, he would like if he was like stressed or got scared by like a loud noise, he'd shake after, right? And so what is actually happening is they're shaking off excess cortisol.
Oh,
and the more cortisol, the more we're actually moving that energy through our body, but it's actually helping us regulate cortisol in the process. So there's important parts of like, hey, that's sort of natural. But then what happened for human beings is because we have a really developed prefrontal cortex that allowed us to be like, oh, no, like that's shameful, that's embarrassing. And so we learned to repress some of those natural things our body would do physiologically to release that stored distress. So there is something powerful to like, I'll tell you when I've seen, again, kind of similar thing where I've seen people come in and be like, yeah, I've been doing the work for years. Like when I get angry, I punch a pillow over and over. Like, I'm like, that's silly. Like I like, that's the, like,
okay, don't.
Like, okay, but like,
the first thing you're embarrassing yourself.
But I'm like the poor person that they think they're going to like heal.
Not me doing that today. No joke, this morning, I like rolled over and was yelling in the pillow. I'm like,
I'm sorry.
I was like cussing into a pillow.
I'm so sorry.
Hey man, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do and you're gonna do what you're gonna do.
So like, listen, if people want to do it as a one-off, but it's not gonna heal your whole world, you know, like that's the thing. And like I would see people be like, yeah, I've been doing therapy for years and this is what I do. And I'm like, but you're not gonna like get headway. Like you're not
gonna.
So like there is an important part of it where it's like the cortisol piece, discharge your emotional energy, like shake things off. Like, and there's sometimes benefits and actually like when you feel something stressed or stressful, you come back into your body, you notice what you're feeling and you do something to discharge the emotional energy. If you're angry, you can feel like you're pressing on something, you can shake, you can rub your arms. Like there's things you can do to like mimic that natural process that your body needs to complete. And there's actual like steps you can go through really specifically, all that kind of stuff. But what I found to be much more useful in the nervous system somatic space is something called somatic processing. So
no, I just keep laughing. Sorry.
I saw your microaggression.
I know. Okay, sorry.
So you're good. So there's this part where, and you'll probably understand this deeply. I'm sure your audience will understand this. But I remember reading this study, and it was at the same time that I was reading years ago, Eckhart Tolle, his
A New Earth.
Yeah, A New Earth. And
such a good, it's like everyone's opening.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, wow.
And so there's a study, and I was like, I've always loved like the spirituality with the neuroscience part. Where do they like intersect? And I remember reading these studies and then like reading this book and be like, wow, they're the same thing. And he talks about the pain body, and he talks about how like get into your witnessing consciousness, like make sure you witness emotions when they come up rather than just identify with them. And interestingly, there was this fMRI study done where they took participants and they put them in these fMRI scanners, and they had them recall really triggering events. And what they found is people would have all this brain activity drain out of their prefrontal cortex and into their reptilian brain when they were triggered. And we've all seen and felt this. When you're triggered, you like act like the animalistic version of yourself. And then later you kind of sober out of it and you're like, wait, why did I say that thing? Why did I send that email? Whatever it might be. So then they had the participants, rather than keep going on and on with the story, they had them practice just a somatic practice of witnessing their emotions and labeling, hey, I feel anger, and anger feels like heat in my chest and my arms, or I feel sadness and that feels like a ball in my throat and heaviness in my torso and hollowness. And they had them just go into labeling their sensations. And what they found were two things. Participants, after they stayed focused on the sensations, which is a form of somatic practice, which in turn regulates the nervous system, they got out of the story of their mind, which is, of course, rehashing the difficult event, which is causing you to feel more triggered. They actually found brain activity just come out of the reptilian brain and back up to the neocortex regions and prefrontal cortex.
Wow.
So where people were their more like logical, higher version of themselves. And they found that people reported having done that work feeling much more regulated.
Wow.
So what I love as like a very simple somatic process to start is to practice that, is to practice like getting people in a position where they're like, okay, when I feel triggered, I'm going to practice like witnessing my emotion, staying really solid and not getting into the story in my mind, but instead getting into what I'm feeling in my body, noticing the sensations and sitting with it until it passes through. And then if we want to do something to bring it to a cycle of completion after, like if you feel anger, like push down on something, or if you feel stress, like shake it out, like all these things, then that can help us come full circle. And those things do regulate the nervous system. But I really like the somatic piece first because we're also fully present with ourselves in that moment. And it also meets the need for self-attunement.
Interesting. I like too how I'll do that sometimes with clients, and I didn't really even think about that was what we were doing. It feels intuitively like sometimes people's trauma lives at places in the body, like in their stomach or in their throat or on their heart and stuff like that. So it's like bringing them to that sensation of, and then almost like you can feel like a releasing of the energy or moving of the energy. You can feel how deep it is. They'll be like, it's colored, which is so interesting. So my work is in IFS. So I love IFS. Like that's what I teach. That's what I like really work with. So a lot of times when I hear things, I think of like parts.
Yes.
And especially with attachment theory, I've always thought about like parts, like, because it's like the part of you that was trained to be anxious or trained to be avoidant or all of those things is oftentimes what I think needs healing and needs attunement and needs like love and nurturance. How do you think about parts? Like, is parts something that you do?
Yeah, I love this question. This is so interesting. So, okay, so I've actually done an IFS certification. Yeah. And what I found is that every part has a core wound and a need. Yeah. And so what I found is you can go to the parts. I did that for a little bit, and then I felt like it was more efficient in the way I process information because that was the work I did first. To be like, each part has a core wound. If you help the part overcome and rewire that core wound, and then in that moment, you're able to access, okay, this is the need, because the part is doing something as a function of meeting the need. Yes. And so they kind of go hand in hand in that way, but that's sort of the angle that I take for it. But I love that work as well. And I'm a big believer in it. Because
it's so good. I think what's good about parts work, especially for me in attachment healing, is that personifying it can help the brain process. Because if you think of a little girl in you that's looking for attachment or looking for to be soothed because she's anxious, it's so much easier to work with that little girl than it is to think about yourself as the thing or think about you as like in full, like having this issue. And so it's really been like such a beautiful practice, even for me, I guess in my disorganized, as I've been working with it more, thinking about the different, it's interesting. I've worked with my anxious part. I haven't worked with my avoidant part much, but I was trying to work with her recently through healing my betrayal wound. I was really working on my betrayal wound, but I was attaching my betrayal wound to like being cheated on and things like that. And so that was like where I was feeling betrayal. But so maybe I was like doing my own or like work with that. What do you think is one thing or two things that people get wrong about attachment styles, or you think like you really want to clear up about the narrative?
Yeah. So I would say the first part. So the other thing I want to just mention really briefly is that there's 2 other parts there. We won't go into them, but the other parts are you're doing them in relationship with other people, which is you're healing your attachment style. Those first 3 are with self. The others are learning to have healthy boundaries with people and how to wire that in and how to communicate more effectively. So
wait, let's talk about those because this is my whole journey. This is my testimony. Bring my mic closer. Dude, the communication piece is everything.
Yeah.
Like you being able to communicate in hard times, you being able to express your needs, you being able to understand yourself, you being able to and it's not just saying my mom betrayed me, so I have betrayal wounds. That's not it's a form of communication, but it's like in this moment I feel hot. In this moment I feel the need to pull away. In this moment I'm feeling it's like naming the thing while still being in relationship to it, but still being in relationship to the other person.
Yes.
Is like the real deep work of deep relationship. And I think what I've really been working on really deeply the past year, which has been really, really beautiful, but definitely is like a different total experience than I've ever had before, where I was just kind of blended the whole time and was like speaking from parts.
Yeah. And so I love that. And what I find is like a lot of people, and it's interesting because that's probably the part of the avoidance side. It's like, oh, I didn't communicate in the past. Like when we're not communicating, when we're icing out or stonewalling or pushing people away or shutting down, like all of that is a part of our avoidance in those types of situations. And we do that because we're projecting the core wound subconsciously. We believe this thing is going to happen. Why? And sometimes it's even like, if you didn't have your needs met enough growing up, then you end up in a situation where you're like, you're just assuming that your needs won't be met anyways. Yeah. You don't even, it's almost like an unknown unknown. You don't even know that you could communicate in that moment. You're just so in that subconscious space of like shutting down, pulling away, self-protecting. So I actually frame the work in that order for that reason, because as we start moving through core wounds and then we know our needs, now we actually know what to communicate. And as we regulate our nervous system and do somatic processing, we're now less so intensely triggered in real time because we can witness our emotions, we can be with ourselves, and now we can actually communicate from that space. So I love that you said that. So when it comes to communication, I give people a framework. So I always say to people, hey, we want to, and this is where I see communication go wrong for a lot of people, is first of all, we have to be willing to be vulnerable. It's never going to feel comfortable to communicate if you have years of not communicating. It's going to feel terrifying. I still remember to this day, the first time I communicated, when I felt really vulnerable, and I remember like what I was wearing, like, and I never think about stuff like that. Like
you're like, I like you. And you're like, no.
But I remember saying like, it was actually with my husband.
What'd you say?
I had done all of this work on other stuff, and I had never done like this relational work with to speak to people. And it was like, we've been dating for like 6 months, and he was late. I was supposed to pick him up. His car was being taken in. He was running late. He was getting his hair cut. And I was supposed to drop him at work and then go to my work. And it was this whole thing. And he was running late and I was waiting. And I was like pissed, like, hey, I'm going out of my way. And like, now you're going to make me late because you're late. And I called him and he didn't answer. And back then I still had this like very avoidant side where I was like, I'm only calling once. I will not do more. I called and I was like sitting there watching the clock and I was not going to call again. I was like, if he doesn't come in 1 minute, I'm leaving. And like, that's too bad. And that was that part of me that was like stubborn and wouldn't speak and wouldn't share. And so he called me like at the minute. And I remember being like, almost like more mad because I couldn't totally resolve it. And so he got in the car and he's like, hey, sorry, Oh, the hairdresser was talking. And I remember feeling in that moment like, oh, he's like so preoccupied with the hairdresser that And I remember feeling like this fierce, like,
I'd be like
frustration, disrespected. And it was a core wound I hadn't worked on yet. And that's exactly what the wound was for me. And it was not like a typical huge, but that's actually comes up in our core wound list of things.
Disrespect is like, exactly. I've been like over the years, like I'm good now with employees. Like they do like something, I'm like disrespectful. Lindsay would be like, what is wrong with you?
So literally like that was exactly the wound. And I was like, all I wanted to do was just be like cold, like just like cold, drop them off, whatever. And I remember being like, oh, I like haven't known how to communicate. And I was already working with people, with clients, like for a living. And I was like, okay, I gotta like hold myself to a bit of a standard here. And I remember knowing I had 2 options. And one was going to be, I was going to be soft and say how I felt. And it felt so terrifying. And the other was like, I knew I wasn't going to go anywhere. And it was like that feeling. So I was just going to shut down and ice out. And I was like, I am not going to go back to doing that. Like I've done a lot of work. Like I can't go back through that pattern. And so I remember saying, and I remember I had this red shirt on, and I remember like, I was almost having this like out of body experience when I was speaking. And I remember being like, I am feeling like a little bit frustrated right now because I'm going out of my way and I'm now going to be late to work and like I'm doing a favor. And like the fact that you were caught talking to some woman, like that makes me feel really, and I think I said the words, like I feel disrespected. And he's like, okay. And he responded so nice. And he's like, first of all, the hairdresser was a man. And second,
you're like, I know she was a hot woman.
Yeah, exactly. And then,
that's so me.
And then he was like, and thank you, like, for telling me that. And he just responded so nicely because I was vulnerable and because I like said, and I was like, and he's like, yeah, like, I get that. I'm really sorry. Like, let's get going. Like I don't want you to keep you late. I can always jump in like an Uber or something if we need to. I think it was like taxis back then, so long ago. And he was like, but he like was so supportive. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is what secure people do in relationships. Like this is how people interact. And so I learned over the years that like a really easy way of just approaching things is when you feel upset, converting your feeling into like actual words. Hey, this is what came up for me in this situation. And here's what I need to feel better. Because so often with couples, what I would see is people would say, I feel betrayed or I feel hurt or I feel upset. And then the person like wants to fix it, but they don't know what their partner needs. So then they just end up being like, I'm really sorry. And then it doesn't feel fully resolved.
Totally.
So to be able to know your needs, which is part of why the needs pillar comes earlier, is when you start building needs literacy with yourself, it's much easier to be like, hey, this is what I need in the future. And then we can actually get to resolution better. So whenever there's a conflict, both people have to say, hey, this is what came up for me in terms of my feelings. And here's what I need that would make me feel better. And then you work to brainstorm and find that kind of middle ground.
Wow. It's so funny. I'm so grateful for the work that I do. And I'm sure you are too, because it does hold you to a standard.
100%.
Where you're like, oh, like you could not be in the work and not be in like the part of it. But like, it's so funny because that for me, I think relational work is the deepest work. I think it's the most scary work, the most vulnerable work. Like I've done a lot of inner work, but like I've found relational work to be the most transformative and the most powerful. And like, I think it's interesting. I have one of my dear friends. She's like one of my most processed, powerful friends. And she's done so much work, but she's now actually, this sounds so weird, just starting to do relational work with like her friends and like being honest and having needs and having boundaries and expressing vulnerabilities and like all that kind of stuff, which can be really, really challenging. And on that point of friends, I've actually noticed in my life, I have some attachment things with friends where I will like my romantic stuff is what it is. But I think I've noticed that with some women, I feel myself being anxious and I feel myself, and not as much anymore. There's actually maybe like very few relationships. It used to be way more, but there's very, very few relationships in my life where I feel that, but I still feel that. Is that possible for you to have that with friends?
100%. And you'll actually have, because of conditioning, this is another thing where people are like, but your attachment style should always be the exact same in all areas. Well, not at all. No. You're going to have little variations. You're very unlikely to see, for example, somebody who's like dismissive avoidant as a partner be like really anxious in friendships. You can see that from time to time, but it's also like conditioning is not like so cut and dry. It's in the relationships we've learned how to relate. The repetition and emotion of our stored experiences there across time. So what you'll see is usually where you're most likely to see it is that somebody who's one attachment style will lean the other way in that situation. So for example, if you kind of imagine it along a continuum, fearful avoidants are sort of in the middle in a sense because they have an anxious and avoidant side. So fearful avoidants generally will lean anxious in friendships or avoidant in friendships. I grew up, for example, being an only child. Here's the first thing about us that's different.
I know. It's like, wait, just kidding. I actually, whatever you say.
But I was an only child till I was 7.
Oh my God. My only childs are like always with me. I attract only children.
And my sister, she's like 7 and a bit years younger than me. And my parents were very protective when I was a kid. So I like didn't have play dates with kids, all this kind of stuff. So I always noticed in friendships that I would lean a little more avoidant because, so I was like an FA leaning DA in friendships, and I would kind of like be more independent, didn't feel like I got as many needs met through friendships. And as I started to heal, I realized that like came back online. But you'll actually more frequently see people who are fearful avoidant who lean more anxious in friendships, if anything. And so it's because you have those wounds. But what's really interesting is that you will see your biggest part of your attachment style show up in romantic relationships because it's where we're the most vulnerable. And what's most vulnerable relates back to your childhood when you were a vulnerable kid, right? So that's where those associations get triggered. But you'll absolutely see your attachment style play out in friendships. You'll have those wounds play out. If you lean more anxious, for example, in friendships, you may feel like, oh, an exclusion wound is often really big there. Like if you feel left out of something, it kind of stings a little bit. Then you can still have a little bit of like the abandonment wounds come up, or the fear of being alone, or not having people around. Like all those things can definitely fire off there. But it's the same process of healing. It's like work through your core wounds, learn your needs, start communicating your needs, regulate your nervous system, and then learn to have healthy boundaries, because boundaries are such an important part. It's that fifth really big pillar of how we actually share our full truth with people. Like I always say to people, when people don't have boundaries, what ends up happening is, first of all, the world's kind of an unsafe place because people can just do with your time and your energy whatever they want. And second of all, like we're not in authentic relationship with somebody if we're only sharing our yeses. Like if we're only saying yes to things, your part of your truth is also your no's. And letting people know that that's your authenticity, letting people know, and I actually don't want to do that, or no, I don't really like that restaurant, or no, I'd rather not commit to those plans. Like being able to really say those things is you honoring your totality in connection with somebody else.
I agree.
And I'm curious if this happened to you, but I noticed in my own work that boundaries was the last thing for me to really get. And the reason for me was that deep down, I read all these books about boundaries. I intellectually understood boundaries like nobody's business.
Totally.
I would know
You're
in real
like,
time.
hey,
Yeah,
I can't.
exactly. Like, and I knew when it was like time to set a boundary. I knew I could notice in real time because I'd worked on attuning to myself when a boundary was being violated. I understood boundaries so well intellectually, but I couldn't bring myself in real time for like a year and a half of doing the work on all these other things. But like boundaries was one of them. I couldn't bring myself to like in real time say a boundary. And I was like, what the heck is happening? Like, why can't this just like click into place? So it's my set point, because a lot of other things had clicked into place and this one wasn't coming. And what I realized is because I had believed that boundaries were going to make me unsafe, because I got heavier handed punishments as a child if I set a boundary. And for some people, it's boundaries will make you abandoned. Boundaries will make you excluded or disliked or rejected or whatever it might be. And so then your conscious mind to set a boundary. Your conscious mind understands when it's time to set a boundary. You're even attuned to yourself. You know what the boundary is. But then if you have this wound that's like protecting you or stopping you from setting the boundary because you believe subconsciously it leads to bad outcomes, then in real time you won't do it. And so it's such an important thing in friendships, but in all relationships. And part of it is like, what are you afraid will happen if you do set a boundary? And noticing the answer to that question, then rewiring that wound, and then practicing exposure work, like setting boundaries with safe people slowly over time first until you feel more proficient, and making it a daily practice until it's like your new normal.
I've had like 3 clients in the past week where I've been like, we're doing exposure work. We're like doing like, you're going to say how you feel in this moment. You know what I mean? It's like, it is. And a lot of doing the work is exposure. Like it's just 100%. Like practicing, exposing the fearful parts of you. It's so interesting. What are some like examples of when you need boundaries?
All the time. So one of the first exercises we get people to do in our programs is I say like, we're going to do a boundary audit. So we go through the 7 areas of life, and like we go through like career, where are you struggling with boundaries? And a lot of things are very hidden. Like sometimes we're so used to or adapted to things we don't even realize, but it would be like staying late after work every day and never saying no. A lot of times it's things like people taking on their coworkers' work and doing it all for them because that person's in distress or in need, but then like getting behind on their own stuff. Sometimes it's like over delivering on everything and not making room for your own self, or not actually taking time to like pause throughout the day, or say no to projects that are not comfortable for you or that you don't actually want to be doing, so that you can say yes to the things that truly inspire you. And like sometimes that's not an overnight process, but sometimes it's honoring that that is a boundary and a need for you, and then being able to move slowly in that direction. So I get people to go through like a financial area of life is like, you can go with friends. You always buy your friends lunch and dinner. You never take, receive. You spend a little too much beyond your boundaries for family members, or take care of people financially too much without like honoring, actually, here's what I can give, which is authentic for me. And here's where I'm overgiving from a place of being boundaryless. So I get people to go through like career, financial, mental. A lot of our mental boundaries are things like not sharing our truth about our opinions. Sometimes it's like our opinions philosophically, sometimes it's politically. And I get that that's like a touchy subject, but that can be done in like a mindful, or it can just be like, hey, I don't want to talk about this with you. Like it can be like, hey, I have a different opinion, but like, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. So like, okay, where are your boundaries mentally? Even things about what you're learning emotionally are very much your emotional boundaries. People who are very attuned to other people struggle with their emotional boundaries the most. I don't know. Because they feel everybody else's emotions, but they forget to like check in with what they're feeling. And sometimes it's like to the point of, oh, I'll tell you one that was a really big one for me. I'm curious if this ever came up for you. The first couple of years I worked with clients, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that because I was like really young too. And it was by accident. And I was like, I can't believe that people want to pay me to help them. Like because all I did my whole life was try to help people anyways. And I remember being like, I remember like literally, this is so funny. I normally don't tell people stuff like this on a podcast, but I remember literally like the first couple of months I would work with clients, I would get in my car on the way home and I would like cry, like happy tears. I was like, I can't believe I get to do this for a living. I can't believe people, like, it was just this whole thing. I was like, I just loved it.
The best.
But then I started growing and growing and growing and I had this really long wait list. And then people would be like, oh my God, you've helped me so much. Like, can you see my brother? And I'd be like, I have a wait list for like 6 months right now, a year. It eventually went to 2 years. And people would be like, but he's like, he's really struggling. He really needs you. What about like Friday evening? What about like 8:30 Friday evening? And I was a kid and I was trying to like figure out my life and, you know, and I remember being like, I had this rationalization that, I had done so much work and all this healing and I was so good. I was so good compared to what I was prior. So it was a huge jump. But I was like, oh, I'm so good. They're in pain and I'm not.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll help them. Yeah. 8:30 Friday, I'll be there. And I did that for like 2 years before realizing, because I said boundaries work was really that last like big thing for me. I did that for a long time before realizing like, oh my goodness, I lose my boundaries when I think other people are in pain. And I justify not having boundaries. If you're in pain and I'm okay, then like I'm going to drop everything. And realizing like, whoa, real boundaries all the way through are being able to still to attune to yourself and notice what you need and at least consider yourself quite strongly when someone else that you care about is in pain. And that was this really like funny thing. So anyways, that would be an example of an emotional boundary. I don't know if you've ever.
Yeah, like, well, rescuer, archetype, you know, like in IFS, it's like rescuer. The rescuer part of you that's usually like online when you're working with clients is like, and that's a lot of therapists, you know what I mean? They become the healers. Yeah. And I think for me, it's almost like I think where I would be leaky with my boundaries was my availability, like being available all the time, like to go wherever you want to go. And I think it was just how used to in life I was to exiting myself and going into someone else's experience. Yeah. And so a lot of my days would be like in Slack or in calls, it just fully exiting myself in someone else's experience and just so little time of my own experience. Yeah. You know, so is that addiction a little bit of like, no boundary to myself of like, who am I? What am I going through? And I think I felt that one time I just did too many calls one day. Like I had a lot of clients at that time. And at the end of the day, I was just like bawling. I was like, I'm so like, I felt so empty because I had been exited all day, you know, and I didn't know how to form again after the end of the day. And it was so like, I was like, where am I after all of this? And where do I place all of this? You know what I mean? And it's like, and I could go deep. I live in the depths all day, but it's at a moment, sometimes it can get a little murky where you're like, okay,
100%.
Where's life?
And then you end up in the situation where you're like, oh, like, hold on a second. I can't even show up properly for anybody else.
Oh my gosh.
If I haven't learned to like be in that position myself first.
Yeah. I realized how my relationships changed because I took on more clients last year. I worked more deeply with a lot more people and a lot of my personal relationships changed where I was way less available for people in my life and my relationships. Yeah. You know.
And then it's this really tragic cycle of like, oh my gosh. And so I spent time there for a bit and was like, holy smokes. And then learned like, okay. And what I came to, and honestly, out of anything, of any work that I've done, like my internal dialogue, my core wounds, my needs, my nervous system, communication, the one thing that I still have to like check on myself with more often is like the boundaries piece. Like, where am I in the world and in the midst? And what I found that's really interesting is I've been so friggin' blessed to do all these things to like, we have our school and our business. And then we have like, I have all these amazing people around me in relationships. I get to do things where I get to talk to people on podcasts for part of my work. Like, it's like, sometimes I'm like, this is so amazing. I love this. But I find that I have a hard time sometimes saying figuring out my boundaries are when they're all great things.
100%.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so that's something, it's like, okay, I have to be conscious of that and check. And I'll do a little like evening routine in the evenings. Where am I at with work? Am I good with stuff? Because I think there's certain people who have certain tendencies predisposed to that way. And I know for me in my own conditioning, a lot of my own childhood was like, I was always between. I was always in the middle of my parents' stuff. And so my deepest parts of my conditioning were to exit myself and be really present with other people. And from like the youngest of age, like really, really early. And so that constant, I think like true boundaries are being able to stay in your body and also to be able to be like, okay, taking myself into consideration, like the art of taking myself into consideration. Ooh, that sounds super interesting. Oh, that's a really exciting opportunity. How am I on time? How am I in my life right now? Am I overbooking things? Am I under, like, what do I have room for that? Like really being able to think it all the way through. And that's like that sort of practice that I find myself constantly coming back to.
I'll never forget. I was with this really, it was like years ago when we were on tour and we were staying at this woman's house and she's so successful, built like so many businesses. And I think we were at her house. She was so nice to have us. She was the best. And I remember asking her, I was like, oh, do you want to do like whatever? I was like, do you want to do this? She's like, let me sit with that for a little bit and like, I'll get back to you. And I had never had someone do that to me of like, sit with it, think about it, like have a response that you thought of like, and I literally remember being in that moment and being like, what the hell just happened? Like someone being present and attuned to how they feel now, to checking it, like to recognizing that we were in a dynamic that was creating an energy of wanting to say yes, but also not needing to be out of our dynamic to really see if that was true for her.
Yeah.
And it just like changed my life. I was like, dude, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was literally so cool. I was like, whoa, like she might say no to me. I think she did say no. And then I was like, wow, like I really think actually like I've gotten the most, and it's not even my avoidant, but my most pleasure when like I've had people say like no to me for something. I'm like, wow, that was sick.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was really cool. Like that you just like really honored yourself and did that.
When I was dating my husband, so this is like going back, like we've been together for like almost 11 years, and we were dating for like 3 months, and he was in this job and he was pretty happy with it, but he wanted to get paid a little bit more. And we were at dinner and he, it's funny, I went on to like teach about this after, and I'll share there's a really interesting dynamic here, but, he ran into his old boss, and his boss came up to him and was like, hey, come back and work with us. Da, da, da. We need help. Da, da. And he said, like, just straight up in the moment, he was like, I would consider it, but only if you paid me XYZ amount. And he like just said the amount on the spot. And I remember being like, damn, like I couldn't believe that he just did that. And I was like shocked, but I also was like, oh my gosh, I admired it so much. And I found it so attractive. Of course. And what's so interesting is one of the things that really drives attraction, and it's like obviously romantic big time, but actually also like when you see someone, you're like, wow, and you put them on a pedestal in some way. Yeah. We're so attracted to people who express our repressed traits. And so I take people through this exercise sometimes, and it's like, hey, the things that you have on a pedestal, they're usually things that are your own disowned parts, like your own disowned traits that you've repressed. Wow. And what's so wild, because I love that you said this earlier, that relationships are our deepest work. I believe that all day long. Yeah. And what's so interesting is that the exact things that we infatuate with in the dating stage of relationships early on, unless we learn to integrate them in ourselves, we resent them and get so angry about them, and they pull us apart in the power struggle stage of relationships, which is usually like 1.5 to 2 years in, that everybody inevitably goes through. And I remember it's so funny because I remember being like, that was one of the things I found so attractive is he was like, he would just say how it is. If he didn't want to do something, he'd be like, nope, no, thank you. And it was at that exact time in my life where I also struggled with boundaries.
Totally. You're like,
and I would be like, wow. And I just thought it was like so attractive and so amazing. And then in the power struggle stage, it turned into he's not making compromises with me. Like he's not checking in and da-da-da. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, this is that thing. This is this thing that I've learned about. Like, okay. And so I learned like I have to practice being assertive and most so with him. And it was so interesting because for him, he actually had to practice being more flexible sometimes. And as we learned, and we actually talked about it, and I was like, hey, I'm feeling like sometimes I need more compromise from you and things, and I need you to check in with me on things. And I'm realizing that I'm starting to feel frustrated when that doesn't happen, but it's also my work to start expressing and communicating it. And like, I actually think it would be really good for you as a person to practice like being more flexible and making more compromises. And he was really good at like being in the work with me and like talking those things out. And he's like, okay. And we talk about it now sometimes where like all this time later, thank God I learned to have better boundaries back then, because even though like I'm definitely not perfect there, I came a really long way because I really sucked. that's helped me enormously through like business and work and just so many things.
Yeah.
And after he started doing that work, like his relationships flourished. Like outside of just our relationship, I noticed his friendships deepen, his family relationships strengthen. And like, because oftentimes those same things, it reminds me of this Rumi quote. And Rumi says, if I'm irritated by every rub, how will I ever be polished?
Wow.
And it's like all those things that get to you, that bother you, they're like these entry points into yourself if you're willing to look. And relationships give us those more than anything. And so I often get people like those things that you're so infatuated with at the beginning. It's like, oh, that might be your repressed trait. That like that's a call for you to take on and to integrate.
Totally. And
you see it too. Like I'm curious if you ever had these, but I remember things like people be like, oh my God, this person's so easygoing. I love it. It's always like the type A people who love that. And then like fast forward a year and a half into dating and they're like, oh my God, they're not making plans. What's going on? Yeah. And so that's always that part of herself.
True. I remember an ex, he was like so chill. I was like, God, I just love, he's just so easygoing. Then I was like, this man never does shit. I literally was like, he's a fucking bum around the house. And I remember he loved me because I was like life of the party and like so magnetic. And then we'd go out and he'd be like, can't you just freaking take a night off?
He'd be like, can you just be quiet?
No, he'd literally be like, P, come on, just fucking take a night off. And it was so weird because I was like, wow, that is like so real. I've had men get so magnetized to my power and then like end up being like afraid of it or like hating it or whatever. And I think that's been one of my fears, is being with someone that is afraid of that. But just like a last question, because I think we could literally talk forever. And I know that a lot of women will want to know this, because a lot of women, this is one of the greatest questions, or not the greatest, but one of the most consistent questions we get is how to get men to do the work. So they'll be in relationships with men and they'll say how to get them to do the work. Like, do you feel like you can convince a man to do the work? Like, because your husband was willing, you guys did the work together, you deepened. A lot of women are in relationships with men that I don't know if they know what the work is or are afraid. What could that be like for a woman that's in relationship and wants to go deeper, wants to be seen, wants to have a healthier, more reciprocal dynamic? What do you think she could do?
Okay, I love this question. I always say to people that like each person in the relationship is 100% responsible for their 50%. And there's no such thing as a healthy relationship where one person does all the heavy lifting. It's not possible. It's not sustainable. You'll resent, and that resentment will come out in different ways. But work doesn't always look like sitting down with a notebook and a pen and paper or going to therapy or going to counseling. So for me, and like I'm going to just say this truthfully, I feel like it sounds kind of like arrogant, but it's not intending. Like if you looked at me like before I met my husband, I hadn't done any work, and like I was crazy. I was probably like one of the hardest people to be in a relationship with, you know. But by the time I met my husband, I still had stuff to work out, like communication and boundaries and some of those things that we were talking about. But I had done a lot of work on like who I was at that point. And I knew what I wanted and what I was looking for. I knew what I needed for myself. And I didn't have all these core wounds bopping around, making me have all these things like get blasted out of proportion. So for me, my husband was not like, oh yeah, I'm going to start going to counseling. My husband was not like, his work was that he took a lot of time to self-reflect and think about himself before we had met and reflect on his own patterns. And he's a reflective person by nature. And so
those dismissives are.
Yeah, they're very,
they do be reflected.
Yes. And they often are quite deep. They just don't express it a lot.
100%.
Yeah.
They're in their own little world all the time, just being little weirdos.
For sure. And so I remember there was a point where I knew that we were like butting heads on some stuff and saying like, hey, we should like sit down and like do the work and like pen and paper or whatever. And I remember him saying like, that's not my thing. If you really want to do it, I'll be open to trying it. But like, that's not how I process. And like what I will do and commit to doing is like, if you bring something up or you want to work through something, I'm going to sit with you in it. Like I'm going to talk through it with you. And I remember being in my head, like I'm holding him to that. Like I am holding, and I really believe this because this is not my own experience. I'm using my own experience because we've been talking about it, but this isn't everybody's experience. You don't convince somebody into like sitting down with a pen and paper. You don't convince somebody to like go to therapy and then suddenly they're like, yes, I love this. I can't wait to be there. You stand in your truth and you honor it fully and you show up that way and you ask for your needs and you say what's coming up for you and you communicate. And if you're really landed in yourself, I find that to be the most effective thing for other people joining into the work around you. So for our example, when something came up for me, I had made a commitment. I was going to tell my needs. That was something I realized after that first time with the hairdresser situation, I was like, okay, this is the work for me. Yeah. I'm like, I'm going to show up and I'm always going to do this. And then the other thing is I was like, I know what I need. And I realized with that assertiveness piece, like I need boundary. I need to have better boundaries and to state my needs, and I need flexibility. And I'm going to ask for that in the relationship. And so I think what worked really well in our dynamic is he never sat down and pen and paper. He never went to counseling. He didn't like, it wasn't one of those things. It was like, I was going to show up, and when something was on my mind or heart, I was going to say it. And I was going to do it in a really healthy way. And I knew what I needed to feel resolved. So I would lead with those conversations and say, this is what's come up for me. This is what I need. And it wasn't, and I never did the work for him. I wasn't like, oh, you might need this or you should try this. I was not going to be somebody's therapist. I was not going to be in like that kind of position because I knew that wasn't going to be right for me. And I was doing that work already with lots of clients. I wasn't going to take on the emotional labor of like both parties in the relationship. So I stood really strong in myself, and I would say what my needs are. I would communicate vulnerably. I would do it in a really regulated way. I would like ask for my truth. And I did that really consistently. And what I noticed is very quickly he would join in and help me and hear my needs, but it gave him permission to do the same. And so within like 3 months, it went from me sharing and feeling like my needs were more met and I was more seen, to him being like, oh, and I need this too. And oh, here's what came up for me. And da-da-da.
Like, oh, wait. That's how this is working. Wait a second.
And he was and he got really good at like sharing that.
Bless.
And then that became like the baseline in our relationship. And I remember after like a year of us like really talking stuff through a lot and feeling like we really understood each other and found our footing, I remember saying like, hey, you got really good at being vulnerable, and like saying that to him. And he was like, and he said, and it was so sweet. He was like, it's because you did it and it made it okay. And he was like, it was just normal for us to talk like that. And like fast forward all this time, it's like, if I had to say one thing I'm the most grateful for in our relationship, it's 100% that we talk about everything. Like if something comes up, like if something, any little weird, whatever, we're going to hash it out. Because we like it's a skill we acquired, we developed. And like, that's what I really want for everybody's relationships, because the more you normalize communication, the more you practice it, it's messy at first. It's not going to be like perfect, but there's no forcing somebody into doing the work. There's a vetting. There's a part where you can be like, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to show up, and they're going to join in or they're not. And if they don't, and you're not happy, then that's probably not the right relationship for you. But you have to get into a place where you're going to show up in your truth fully. And that's going to be where somebody is most likely to join in and start doing that same kind of communication practice.
Yeah. It's like you exemplified, you led by doing it yourself, and really gave him like a model and a template of like being the lead of how you feel in your needs. And then he felt like he could do it too. Yeah. Which is so good.
Yeah. And there was no convincing. There was and there was no me like hand holding him through it. Like it was like, he's going to either take it on and figure it out, or he's not. And that's going to, and I honestly was at that point in my life, because it was pretty early into the relationship, that I was like, I'll see, like I'll watch, I'll see how he shows up and responds. And like, I'm going to honor myself. And if he never communicates back or never communicates with me, like I will reconsider the relationship. But let's see. And I speak from my own example, but I've seen this with like countless people where when one person just does what they're going to do, and usually it's the person, some people are like, I don't want to have to be the one to communicate first. Like, listen, if you're the one doing the work and you are the one with the more emotional awareness, you'd always rather be in that position than the alternative.
Interesting.
And so, sure, you're going to lead by example, but the place it gets burdensome is when you're doing it for the other person, and that's not the goal. Totally. But when somebody really shows up and they're really honest and authentic in themselves, then that allows for that type of communication to be fostered. And then you can see how somebody responds accordingly and make your decisions from there.
Wow. I think the first thing that I've really just landed is that I've dated someone that I thought was a narcissist, and they're avoidant, dismissive avoidant. I'm so sorry for them. And then the second is about the subconscious. I love the part about affirmations, and I love the practice that you gave that anybody can do. I think that's amazing. I love how you talked about how attachment styles are flexible and how it's really about meeting those core wounds. I love how you talk about the core wounds before nervous system regulation. I think that's super, super powerful. I love how communication comes a little bit later in the process. And this has just been so, so fun.
This is so fun. I loved talking with you and hanging out with you.
I'm going to come over.
I was like, yeah,
I'm coming to Laurel Canyon.
I would love that.
I'm coming to the spot you're at.
I would love that.
This won't be the last time. It's so funny. I don't know what that sound was, but I was like, did you hear that earlier?
Yeah, I thought maybe you had a cat like smacking something or
That's
something.
what I thought so too, but there's nothing. It was like There's no cat in here.
No? Oh, your cats are not here.
No.
Oh, crazy.
I know, isn't that weird?
Oh, maybe it was my spirit of my dog. Because honestly, I told myself when he passed, I was like, my signal, I was like, I want to sign from it and it's going to be butterflies. And I'm like sitting facing the butterfly. And I noticed it around the time. I like clicked around the time I heard, I don't know, maybe it was a little.
No, when that happened, I was like, it's him.
Aw,
in my mind, I literally thought that too.
And it's so funny too, because one of the reasons I thought that is at the end, he was on all this prednisone. So he was like always friggin' hungry. He would always smash his bowl. And I was like, I pictured, I was like, oh, maybe it's just your cat smashing the bowl. But that thought passed my mind.
No, because I was like, there's no cat in here. That's
sweet.
So weird. Okay. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you? Like if they want to get into you and your work, what would be the first entry point you would suggest them into? They probably know who you are, but still.
I would just say go take our quiz. We have a quiz.
Love it.
It's like it gives you a whole report, and like it's not just traditional attachment theory. It's like integrated attachment theory. So it's your core wounds, your needs. It gives you like an in-depth report, the way your nervous system will function, your types of boundary patterns you'll have, your communication places you'll go wrong. Like it gives you the full in-depth report, and then kicks you off with like, here's how to start the process. So there, and then I'm on Instagram, which is at the Personal Development School, and at YouTube, which is Ty Gibson Personal Development School.
Amazing.
And thank you so much for having me. This is the most fun I've ever had on a podcast.
It's not going to be our last, so don't worry.
Sure.
Okay, guys, we'll see you soon. I love you. Bye. Thank you guys so much for tuning into that one. Make sure to share it with a friend, start a conversation about it, talk about attachment theory, go to Personal Development School on Instagram, and check out the new book that she has, The New Attachment Theory. Again, that was Ty Gibson, and she is such an incredible guest, and I'm glad she came on.
Thank you all for listening. You're the best. Again, subscribe to the show. It means the world to us. And if you feel called or moved to leave a review, we love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you in advance. Okay, everybody, we have 2 new episodes every single week. We'll catch you on the next one.
Love you guys.
Bye.